Well, good morning, everybody. I really appreciate that you're here with us today. We are excited to be able to reconnect with you after the summer, and hopefully you all had a good one and that the school year has started off swimmingly for you. And we have some exciting new things that are happening with ARSA, and we want to make sure that you're aware of them. As I like to make sure that I do to start off our roundtables, I'd like to introduce myself for those of you that may not know who I am. My name is Melissa Sadorf. I'm the superintendent of Stanfield Elementary School District located in Pinal County. And I also serve on the ARSA Executive Board as the president. And I'd like to introduce my co-host, Sean Rickard. Sean?
Good morning. My name is Sean Rickard. I'm the superintendent of Pima Unified School District over here in Graham County. Also working with the Arizona Rural Schools Association, president-elect, and looking forward to another great year of getting stuff going. I know, right now, in ARSA land, our big focus is always the conference coming up in September. Hopefully everybody's got their registrations in for that. And, if you like to play golf, please, by all means, reach out and let us know. I'm sure Jen is still got some foursome she's looking to fill in.
She does.
It's a great opportunity to spend some time out in the Pines, visiting with friends and making new ones. So that's definitely something to look forward to. And then, obviously after that, we've got the rest of the conference with great speakers and breakouts, and the recognitions of our Teachers of the Year. So that's a huge thing on the horizon for the Arizona Rural Schools Association. But right now, one of the things that we want to tell you about, I don't know how many of you follow the Rural Scoop. If you don't follow the Rural Scoop, shame on you, because it's a great opportunity to hear from education leaders in rural Arizona, and even some from beyond Arizona. Melissa does a wonderful job of finding people that are pertinent to the issues that face our struggles every day and bringing those people to the podcast. This most recent podcast introduced our new ARSA policy expert, Dianne Smith. And Dianne comes to us from a long experience working with school districts and government agencies in Arizona to find solutions to education issues. And that's a lot of what the business we're in. So when we saw an opportunity to partner with Dianne and to bring her on as our policy expert, as she's semi-retired, we all know what that means. That means you want to actually get paid a little bit less and work harder, unlike the rest of the world that wants to get paid more and work less. Those post-retirees. So I said, Dianne is a tremendous resource for the association in terms of helping us to understand what's going on in Phoenix. And we're going to have the opportunity to visit with her just a little bit today. So with that, though, I just want to kind of introduce Dianne and give her the opportunity to tell you guys just a little bit about herself.
Right. Did you want to do a lead in?
Go ahead.
You want me to go ahead? All right.
That was it.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dianne.
First of all, I am thrilled to be partnering with the Rural Schools Association. I've worked with them as often as I could over the years, and I know that at the legislature, at the State Board of Ed, at the department, one of them, everybody's main focus is what can we do to enhance your opportunities. So I'm thrilled to be doing this. I mentioned on the podcast, first of all, I'm a mom and I'm a grandma, and everything I've done is based on what's good for my kids and then what's good for all of our kids. And I've been thrilled to have had some awesome public schools and great teachers for my children and my grandchildren. And that's what keeps me focused on student academic achievement. The other stuff all plays in, but my focus is on what can we do as leaders to do the best for our students. I started at the legislature in 1979. Of course, I was only about 3 or 4 years old at the time, but so I've been around the political arena for a long time, and I have a really good understanding of the process, which I believe drives a lot of what we're going to be able to do together, because politicians change and issues change, but the process is really important as we work through who do we talk to, how do we have influence. I do a lot of work with staff and bring staff, to like the ARSA meetings, because staff, though the staff people are the ones that have a lot of influence on the legislators who have, 1,000 things they're doing. So I've had a long history. I was around in 1980 when the school finance reform happened. Back then, I knew the key players. In fact, I don't say this very often, but I will just tell you, the RCL is named after Robert C. Lockwood, who was the key staffer, and the October 15th date in statute is actually my birthday. Literally, it's my birthday. Because I was working with them and they were just picking a date out of the air. So it just shows not everything is thought through well. Sometimes they just pick things. So that's just kind of an interesting tidbit. The other thing is, for years, I worked with a local architectural firm that built school buildings across Arizona. We built in Page, Kingman, a lot in Yuma, besides the Phoenix area. So I became close with a lot of rural leaders, through that effort, and really focusing on, school facilities do impact our student learning. And so that was really a great opportunity. One of the other opportunities I had, I was 3 years as Chief of Legislative Services for the Department of Economic Security, and that was before they split off. And the reason that's important for you all is those are the surround services for our families that many of our families need. And I was able to bring some expertise in those conversations from the school's perspective. And then we were able to work. So when we're talking about childcare, when we're talking about housing. So that was a really great opportunity. And then I was asked to come back to Guppy Mac, which is now Guppy Mac AZMC. So I've worked with them for 28 years as the executive director, but again, worked across the state on issues that are common and issues that are not necessarily common, and how can we make a difference. So that's a little bit about me.
So Dianne, when I heard 1979, you've been involved in Arizona politics for a very, very long time. So you have seen a lot of changes, shifts in people, shifts in policies, shifts in how things operate down at the Capitol. But can you talk a little bit about how education has changed, specifically, if you can, talk a little bit about how rural politics changed, because typically Phoenix can be very urban centric, as we all know.
Absolutely. And it's a really great question. And what I would say is the why has not changed. The why is our focus on student academic achievement for all, not some, but for all. And so the why is still the central point that we're all looking for. The two things that have changed, number one, is the who. And you all know with the teacher shortage, it started over 10 years ago. It's not something new. And the interesting thing is we really haven't solved it, and it just keeps getting worse. Statistics are, it used to be you would have literally, I remember this, 100 applicants for every open position, literally. And now you're lucky if you have 2 or 3, and you're looking at, the quality and the expertise of the ones that are available. And that's impacted principals, and it's impacted your district administrators, and it's impacted the superintendency and the role of the superintendents. So that's just been a huge shift that starts with, you all know, we don't have the quality teachers, we're not going to have the success that we need. So that's really changed. The other thing that really changed is the how, and we're all experiencing that, whether we agree or we don't agree. We're diluting the teaching profession, unfortunately, and we think we can just have anybody in the classroom. And that has not worked out as well as the non-educators believe. And so when they used to talk about bringing in the business community, and you all may have heard this, the Intel guy, Craig Barrett, I don't know how many of you guys know Craig Barrett, but for years they used to say, well, Craig Barrett is just brilliant, but he couldn't teach because of the rules and the regulations. And that simply wasn't true. But what I said to superintendents, make him sign a contract for 6 months or a year. Don't put him in a classroom for a day, because that's a whole different experience. And so what some of the districts found out is that you can hire business people, but they don't stay. And so it just adds to that fluidity of changeover. And I don't, unfortunately, on the horizon, I don't see a lot of positive movement back. But we need to get back to the professionalism and what happens in the classroom, and, the expertise. And so, again, I think that the why hasn't changed, but the how and the who have changed significantly, and not necessarily for a positive.
Absolutely, 100%. No, and that's the thing. It's hard. It's hard sometimes to stay positive. And I think a lot of our rural superintendents, they're especially the ones that are in very small schools where you're having to wear the principal hat, and you're having to wear the sometimes the bus driver hat or the coach hat, and you're doing a million things, and so finding the time to be that voice for the community, the voice for the students, to help to influence the policies that really do affect us. I mean, we were talking yesterday, and I got to thinking, we as superintendents, we think of ourselves as kind of the apex professional. In a lot of ways, we're the ones at the top of the decision-making tree for a lot of decision-making trees. But we're also at the bottom of a lot of decision-making trees. And we're the ones on the ground that bear the brunt of policies that are sometimes, ill-conceived. I love Wes's phrase, never ending the law of unintended consequences. And we're the ones that bear the brunt of that. And so finding time to also, look up as leaders, and to affect things on the upward side, just like, we look down to students and staff to affect our decisions. We need to be doing that for policymakers in the legislature, the department, and the state board. And I wonder, what advice you would have, or what are the kind of the criticals from your experience when it comes to education leaders having the tools, having the information, and then being able to action on that information.
You know, you guys know this, but I always say relationships, 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 and relationships start in your own district. You know, and I've said this for years, not just because I'm working with you, but you folks don't have the opportunity to just zip down I-17 or I-10, you know, and show up at the Capitol or even show up at the State Board of Ed meetings. But a lot of the influence starts in your own districts, building those relationships, which many of you already do with your business communities, attending your the Rotary and the Lions clubs and your chambers. And I think many of you are probably on your local chambers. And then getting those folks into your district. The one thing I've always suggested is putting together a one-page document, and I mean one page and mostly bullet points, because you'll find it's not just politicians, but a lot of people don't like to read the verbiage behind it, you know. So if you put together a one-page document that you can give out, that gives the journey for your students, and you know, put a couple successes out there, put a couple challenges. Don't just focus on the challenges, because I like what Sean said, and that's always been my motto: solutions-oriented outcomes. And you'll find people love that attitude when you come and you're trying to work together for solutions. But putting this one-page document together gives you the opportunity to share your story. And then we used to say this in the architectural field. I don't know if they still do, but we called it a leave behind, you know, which is kind of a weird statement. But when they would be at a board meeting, they would have a packet put together that they would leave behind with the board members. Well, this one pager is great for you, because whether it's a politician or your business community, they like to be able to pull something out and say, at a fingertip, this is the, you know, it gives the demographics of your district. It gives you what all you're doing. So those are key things that they do take time. I get that, but I'm willing to do whatever I can do to give you a template or something that would be able to help you guys to fill in, and everybody's is going to be different. So it shows your differences, but then it shows your commonalities as an association also. Does that help?
100%, it does. And that's a key. I mean, you know, a key tool that, and I know a lot of people, especially when superintendents are coming into the superintendency, or sometimes it's about year 3 or 4 that you've got, you know, you feel like the fires have burned down to coals in the district. You can start looking for other places to find fuel. But one of the things that, you know, and Dianne and I, you know, we've worked together quite a while, but over the last couple of years, as I got involved with Guppy Mac, you know, one of the things that I always appreciated was the way that you provided, you know, a distilled summary. You know, we get a lot of information as superintendents from a lot of different sources, and sometimes it's hard to kind of sift through. You know, but one of the keys that I've always appreciated is that, you know, you provide information with with highlights, because, you know, that way I can look at the highlighted section and decide, is this something I care enough about to read the whole paragraph or the whole, you know, summary. And it really, that's a tremendous tool for me. And that's one of the things that I'm so happy to be able to bring to ARSA and to our members, because, you know, if you have to sort through everything, then pretty soon you end up maybe turning away from that upside of the decision tree. So
Well, and To that end, Sean, Diane, can you talk a little bit about, we Siny died very late this year. I mean, like very late this year. Can you give us a little bit of that summary from last session as far as what do rural leaders need to know right now that is going to impact them in the upcoming year? And then expand that into what is on the horizon, knowing that we're going into an election in 2024, knowing that there are some things that were kind of left lingering from last session that might come back this session. Can you give us a look back and then a look forward as far as what rurals need to know?
You know, I've been doing this a long time. This was the first time we've ever gone past June 30th. Well, officially, I was there twice when they covered the clock, but we still only went into like maybe July 1st, but they would cover the clock because they never intended to ever go past June 30th. So this is a unique year, but the thing to remember is the budget was signed May 11th. May 11th. So normally when the budget's signed, we are all excited about sine die, end of session. And actually, so are most of the legislators and staff. The fact that it didn't happen this year was based on a couple issues like water issue, and I don't mean just Rio Verde in Cave Creek, but overall water issues, the Prop 400 issue, which was a Maricopa County issue. But just in case you didn't know this, Maricopa County is the only county that has to get approval from the legislature to do this. No other county has, so that made it even more challenging because now the whole state representatives were voting on what was going to happen with Prop 400. And a lot of the controversy over that was light rail, and especially light rail heading towards the Capitol. So that was a big issue that they really hadn't solved. So they had a couple big things, but literally, I will tell you, in all these years, they have never taken a 2-week break and then come back, did 1 or 2 things and took another 2. It's just not the way it operated. But again, we have a new governor who's a Democrat, and we still have a Republican-controlled legislature, and that plays a big part into what happens, especially the first year. Because if, just in case you don't know, all of the state agencies have to have their budget requests in by September 1st. So that's what, Friday. So a year ago, it was September 1st, but the election hadn't happened. So we didn't know who was going to be governor. So all of that information was there. Then when Governor Hobbs was successful and put her staff together, they immediately had to go to work on, what was going to be in her state of the state, what was going to be in her budget, because her budget proposal comes out on Friday of the first week of session. So I don't know if those dynamics were really important. And then we know there's a couple other issues like abortion and ESAs that are out there on the horizon also. So I will give Governor Hobbs credit for all of her vetoes, because she stopped a lot of bad things that would have affected school districts, and especially in the rural areas. I will tell you the positive, because I'm really a positive person, even though I work in politics for a long time. You just have to, be positive. But there is a big focus on the rural communities. Part of that started with your effort, and I know that Wes was a major part of this. I always say it wrong, the Final Mile project. And I know that you guys are working at the national level on the money that's coming in. And so there has been a really intense focus on the rural areas. And this has been a little change. A lot of the rural areas are represented by Republicans, but some of them are still very supportive of their school districts, and we just have to find ways to work with them. And the ones that we can't, you just focus on the ones you can work with, you know. But the final mile and that broadband project that the governor supported, and again nationally that you guys worked on, there's a lot more pieces to that, because I think Wes can tell you that's not finished. And then on top of that, the other IT issues that you guys know about, the cost of your software licenses, you know, the cost of changing over your hardware, whether it's Chromebooks or whatever, you know, the maintenance of all of that. You know, IT is not a single shot issue. Now we've solved it. And a lot of people, even in the business community, which frustrates me, forgets that also there's a lot of components, you know, to that issue. So moving forward, I think some of the things that you guys might want to be looking at, and I think Sean and Melissa are going to be talking about this, you know, for the conference, and then even a special meeting in January. Start looking at what issues you want to look at. I think school facilities is a big one for you all. And in many of your districts, you need to tear down and rebuild. And that's not an available option. But I think we can work with the governor's office, and we can work with some legislators and make some changes in the school facilities issues. Transportation is another one. You know, you guys know, well, and again, Wes with his transportation district, you know, your buses cycle through a lot faster than maybe, you know, in the, you know, Maricopa County area or Pima area, other areas. So I think those are two issues. The other thing that I like to focus on, because I think it helps you guys, is special ed cost. You know, we got a bump in that a couple years ago, but you're still using your regular ed money to pay for your special ed costs. And I think if we deal with a couple Republicans along with Democrats, that's something, even if we get another 10 million, $20 million bump, every bump helps. And gifted money, I'm not sure, I haven't chatted with you guys enough yet on the gifted programs, but that's another issue we need. We got $1 million, but that's a drop in the bucket, because we know we have gifted students everywhere, and the cost of testing the students, which the legislators paid last year or the year before, but I think that's, you know, going to be gone. So I like to pick things that are not necessarily we're going to work on the big things, but I think different issues, and I'm excited to hear from you guys in September. What are the issues that affect you that other people may not think about? And I do think that as an association and as individual soups, you have a lot of influence coming up. Sorry, hope that was good.
Diane, one of the things, as far as the look ahead, that I want you to talk a little bit about, if you could, the State Board of Education just had their annual retreat, and you were able to attend. And can you give membership just kind of an overview about what they talked about, and what's something that is important for them to be able to know about that retreat?
Yes, I actually drove to Yuma, and it was 123 in Yuma, but we were cool inside Arizona Western College. But I have to tell you, you guys had a shout out at least twice, if not more, during the State Board of Ed meeting, which is really exciting. There are a lot of things that the state board, one thing I don't do a lot of is spin. I think Sean kind of alluded that I'm pretty much a fact, and I try to give you what's going on. When this State Board of Ed was put together by Governor Ducey, there were a lot of concerns. Were they too far right? Were they charter people? Were they ESA people? But I'm going to tell you, they work pretty well together. And that's one reason I went in person. I go every year to their retreat, because you get to watch the dynamics, and it's a different level. A couple things that I'm only going to read these because I just got back yesterday, and so my mind is still filled. But a couple things that I think you will get more information coming from Wes and Melissa and Sean, especially as we get towards September. But they have made a huge difference in the A to F process. So the ATAC And Sean has been on ATAC, I think, from the very beginning. That's the group that comes together. It's a small group of key kind of, sorry, Sean, but kind of data nerds. They're the ones that look at the data and do the modeling and come up with, well, that group has always not been a public meeting, I'll just say it that way. And there were reasons for that. But in light of all the transparency, everything that's going on now, they have made those meetings now public. They have an agenda, posted agenda, people can attend. But the ATAC, Sean Smith from the department is awesome. If you haven't worked with him and you need anything, there's too many Seans right now. So we have Sean Rickard, we have Sean Smith, and then we have Sean Ross at the State Board of Ed. So usually we have to say last names. But he has actually put out the formulas of how they're calculating the A to F, which was never out there. The state board adopted the business rules 8 months early. It is, trust me, I've been doing this a long time. And at the last minute, we're like, what are the business rules? What are, those are already out there. And so now there's a really good working relationship between the state board and the department on how you all can communicate with the department to make sure your data is clean. Do it now. Before you had the short window to get that done. I'm spending a lot of time on this, but I think it's huge because the appeal process is very cumbersome. It's not always successful. They've made a couple changes regarding that, but their intent is to say the first time they send out, the letter grades, the data, that it's as clean as possible. So don't wait till the last minute.
And I'll just add to that. I mean,
yes.
Just to interject a little bit, but I mean, the ATAC will make a recommendation to the state board on cut scores. We actually had a discussion on cut scores at the last meeting. We'll make a recommendation at the next meeting. The state board will take up that recommendation at their September meeting, and then they'll make a final decision in October. Now, what does that mean? Well, the long and the short of it means there's a 99.9% chance cut scores will be the same this year as they were last year. We know that. I mean, the discussion of the ATAC was unequivocal. I mean, unequivocal. There was no discussion on what else we should do or why doing anything else would be a good idea. And so you can really calculate what your letter grade is going to be. I mean, based on and what it should be and what it will be based on the numbers the state has, and if there's any issues, get those addressed before those, because once the cut scores are set, I mean, bam, it's public and it's out there, and then it's an appeals issue. But there's lots of things that can be done to rectify that between now and then. Hey, I see that Jamie had her hand up.
Oh, sorry.
If we can, let me just let her jump in.
Hi, my name's Jamie Festadagel from Lake Havasu. I just met with Dr. Matt Ladner and then someone from the Goldwater Institute last week, and really these little nice stories sound so nice in the work, but there is a coordinated real effort to share with the state that schools are failing. Kids are not learning to read at 8th grade or at 3rd grade. Students are not algebra ready at 8th grade. Like, it is coordinated and real, and that is what they're sharing with legislators. And it's hard, as someone from a rural community, I hear it all the time. Your school is doing great, Jamie. I mean, we have the furthest of the far people on one side. Your school is doing great, but those other schools, it is so real that there is a belief that Arizona schools are failing. We are not going to develop the workforce that we need to support all these semiconductor factories that are being built and yada, yada, yada. How do we change that narrative in a coordinated manner. And so I know we can write the little page and we can call them, but there has to be a coordinated narrative that our students are learning to read in third grade. Our students are algebra ready. Our students are filling those careers. Who is doing that work and how do we amplify that on our side? Sorry, I'm a little hyped up about this.
Well, I don't blame you. I've known Matt Ladner for years, and I've known a lot of people at the Goldwater Institute, because you keep your friends close and you keep the other people closer.
Mhm.
I won't use the word enemy, but it is a real concern. And your question is so valid, because it's tough on the education side to make the point back to them, because it's like, well, you're the people, of course you're going to say you're doing a good job. But I will give you a positive connected to this, and it's a statistic you can use. I don't know how many of you work with Read On Arizona. We're going to be talking about that. They want to work closer with the rural community. But Terry Clark is awesome, and she just gave me the statistic that Arizona was the third best reading scores in the nation. And Mississippi was number one, Hawaii was number two, but Arizona was number three. Now, how many times have you heard that? Because probably none. And so to your point, that's exactly what even Terry Clark was saying. How do we get people to say that? Now, then you get into the discussion of growth versus proficiency and all of that. I get that. But in general,
you have obviously heard the same pitch that I heard.
Yes, I have. Yes. And I will tell you a quick story. Sorry, Sean, but I'll tell you this quick story about Matt Ladner. In 2010, when the legislature adopted the Florida reforms, because, they were going to change everything in Arizona, and even Governor Bush at the time said, you can't do it because we didn't put any money behind it. Matt Ladner testified in 2010 before the House Education Committee, and he said, we need to adopt these reforms. It's the foundation, and I know the money will come. And so after he left the podium, I went to him and I said, I'm going to remind you of that statement every time I see you. And every time I saw him, I'd say, where's the money? And so it's interesting, but I'm going to say that's something that we'll start working with from a leadership perspective and with other ed organizations, because it is true, because, when people say things, it becomes reality even when it's not. And it is so frustrating. And your example is so true. Oh, I love my school. It's the rest of those people that are crazy and not doing a good job. And it just perpetuates. So we will work with, whoever leadership decides they want me to work with, because I'm out there all the time. But I think that's a number one issue that they might want to consider. How do we get the message out in general that that's not, because they are dangerous. And I don't know how many of you have followed the Goldwater Institute. Literally, I knew them when, good old what's his name, who I know very well, used to be a congressman. Flake, Jeff Flake. I've known Jeff Flake forever. And when he was at the Goldwater Institute and charter school started, they still worked with us. But the Goldwater Institute now they have multiplied across the nation. Right. They are doing these negative things for public education across the nation, and then that makes it even tougher. But I appreciate that comment, because I you're right on target. So we'll mark that down.
And I think part of it, Jamie, is you understand they're beating a drum, and it goes back to CRT, and it goes back to it goes back to the backlash against Black Lives Matter and identity politics and SEL, because that's all about them. And so they say, well, our schools are failing. Why are our schools failing? Because we're spending too much time, and I've heard Tom Horn say this on more than one occasion. We're spending too much time on these distractions. on these things that distract us. That's why kids aren't learning to read. It's not because of parents and poverty and opioid crises, and and there are a lot of things going on in our society that make it much, much harder to teach kids to read. Hey, how about the fact that they don't spend time with books, they spend time with YouTube? I mean, I just spent the weekend with my grandkids, and not once did anybody ask me to read them a book. They just wanted me to watch them play video games. I mean, it's there are things that are changing that are way outside of our control, and their solution is, well, let's stick our head in the sand and let's pretend that the problem is things aren't the way they were back when we were trying to educate Gen X or the baby boomers. And that's not an effective strategy. And I think part of what we need to do, like I said, is as we start looking up, is think about what are the solutions that we would want to see work in Arizona, because a lot of times we're pushing back, we're being reactive, and
So
I think
if I could just have you extend that kind of conversation to what we're planning on doing at the conference, because what you're talking about is the reason that we are going to be having a pre-conference on Thursday. So we've set aside a 3-hour block of time to have these kinds of conversations around what is important to us and what do we want to make sure that we are coalescing around, as far as where do we want to put that time and attention as an organization in this upcoming session. So Sean, if you could talk a little bit about the pre-conference, that would be great.
All right, I'll be brief. So the plan is to start at 3. So golf gets done at 1. That gives you time to go back to your room, wash off the sunscreen, go to the bar, grab a quick Diet Coke, and then head over to the Ponderosa room, where we'll start. And we've broken up into 2 parts, kind of modeled a little bit after AASA's advocacy conference, if any of you've done that. But part 1 is kind of background, talking about the current education policy issues facing rural schools in Arizona, and then a little bit about current education policy issues facing schools in rural America. And so that's kind of part 1. And we've got some people that are going to come in and make some short presentations, hit it. The meat of it is in part 2. And part 2 is kind of taking, okay, out of all of those issues in that survey, what are the things that are really top of mind for us as education leaders in rural Arizona? And where do we see opportunities for consensus? Where do we see opportunities where we really want to kind of sink our teeth in to trying to make a difference? And so part 2 is about a little bit about our approach, but then the elephant in the room, talking a little bit about the teacher shortage, because that's a huge thing. And then finally, just what are our priorities? What are the things that we need to do to increase the capability of rural districts to meet the needs of children in rural communities? And that's the focus. So again, 3 to 6. So we're gonna keep it, within boundaries, and we're gonna hit what we're gonna hit. But the goal again is, when we're done, in the past, we've come up with priorities, and those priorities were, I'll tell you, largely based on a conversation that I had with Don German back, well, when Don German was the executive director, and that's kind of what has carried us through until now. But I think it really is time for us to look at the process. And so I hope that it's a time that even if you weren't going to play golf, come up a little bit early. You can always grab lunch down at Beaver Street, and then come on over to the pre-conference discussion priority thing at 3 at Little America. So I hope to see you there.
Yeah, very good. Thank you. And to extend
Can I
that.
go a little bit?
Please.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Melissa. I just had a couple more things from the State Board of Ed that might be, it might be good for them to know.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, sorry, I'll
Sure.
go fast, because boy, an hour does go fast, doesn't it? But this is so good because I don't really, I mean, I know some of you, but I'm loving this. The other thing that's positive is the State Board of Ed is going to start a Student Advisory Council. And one of the things they said yesterday, we need 11th and 12th graders from the rural areas. And so I sent some information to Melissa and Wes, and I think they may get that out to you all. But that, and this is not a fake committee. They really want kids, they're gonna, give them some civic understanding, like, maybe meet with the governor's office and maybe meet with, Tom Horn and different things. But this council, but they really made it clear they don't want just Maricopa County people. They want the rural community represented. And according to the one pager that I sent to them, they're going to do some of those meetings virtually with the students. And then I think they're going to try once a month to bring them to Phoenix. But I'm sure as leaders, you guys will find ways. But that's a good connection for you guys to really look at. And so I think we need that as soon as possible. But they really spent a lot of time. They mentioned that some states have a student advisor, like on the Board of Regents, they have a student on the Board of Regents. We don't have that officially in Arizona, so this is going to be their connector, with students, listening to them. So it's just going to be really great. School improvement, I'm just going to talk about quickly because that will be a big topic at the September State Board of Ed meeting. But Michelle Udall, the Honorable Michelle Udall, she was a legislator. She's now the Associate Superintendent for School Improvement at the department. And they are really focusing on school improvement areas. And again, I mean, if you say the rural area once, they say it a million times. So they want to be able to, provide better. Now, we know every superintendent of public instruction says this. We're not going to be doing monitoring. We're a service organization. And then we all roll our eyes and go, yeah, right, But there are a couple things I want you to look at. One is the access to the Failing Schools Tutoring Fund. And they mentioned that, and I don't have any details right now, but I can get it if you guys want me to. But that's money that comes from Prop 301 that's been available, and it sounds like there's still money there. So we want to be able to get that information out to you all. The other thing that we're going to get out to you all, again, working with Terry Clark and Read on Arizona, there's a literacy grant opportunity. Now, this one's due September 15th, but I think Wes and Melissa are going to get this sent out to you. There's the website information, a webinar, and the way Terry described it, now, don't hold me to this, but she said it's not as difficult to complete as some grants. Now, that's all relative for you all when you don't have grant writers and you're doing 14 things. But again, we're just trying to get the information out to you all that there is money available that would help you. And remember when they passed the legislation a couple years ago about the dyslexia training and the K-5 literacy endorsement, professional development, this money can be used for all of that. But the school improvement piece is going to be unfolding even more. There's a Project Momentum, which some of you may know, some of you may not know. And I am doing a little work behind the scenes with them also. And it's a great program, but it's intense and you have to do it with fidelity. So it's not easy, but it's going to be one of their foundation programs. So more coming on school improvement, but know that, there's going to be other monies available because we know your ESSER dollars are running out. Let me see. Okay, so I talked about the oh, and this is the other thing. The Jessica, who's their research and data person, she was saying they were asking her who she works with, and she said other organizations. And one of the two mentioned was the Rural Schools Association. So it's the first time I met her. I don't know if Wes knows her. But I went up and talked to her and told her what I was doing. And so it was a good shout out for you guys. Again, and I'm not just saying that. At the legislature, when I'm talking to legislators and the governor's office, and Wes was there, they really want to focus on, they know the importance of the rural communities. And one other thing that's really important, there was a lot of stuff at this retreat, sorry. The comprehensive needs assessment, which you guys probably all, have they're reducing the number of questions from 168 to 20. That's going to be huge. So they are looking at making some of those changes. Okay, I'll stop on that from the state board retreat, but there were a lot of good positive things, and Yuma County is just doing amazing work. Arizona Western College, and some things that prototypes that you guys would be able to use if you're not already using them. So stop.
Wes, I want to make sure that before we end, because we've only got about 8 minutes left, and I know that Wes has a question. So I just want to point out that one of the things that membership has asked for is some support around how do I do advocacy work in my community, or how do I refine those advocacy skills so that I'm more effective telling our story whether it's with a policymaker or some other influencer within the community. And so what we are planning is a winter workshop that's going to be taking place in the Phoenix area. And I know that, we have a hard time sometimes pulling ourselves away from our rural communities to get to Phoenix, but this one will be in Phoenix on January 19th. And we will be holding a networking reception on Thursday night. We're going to be looking to ensure that your hotel is paid for so that it's not a burden for your district as far as cost. Your time is a cost, of course, but we want to make sure that it's easy for you to get there, easy for you to stay. And then we'll have a day where Dianne will be working with the leaders that are in the room to give you some content on how do you structure that one pager, how do you have that elevator speech prepared, what are your talking points when you're working with your community. Dianne, do you want to talk just a little bit more about what we're planning?
Yeah, I'm very excited about this because the timing is perfect, because the governor will already have given her state of the state speech, and we will already have her budget, which will be good. And usually around that time, we have the majority and the minority, their focuses, which I have to tell you, we're not sure about this year, because just to give you a really quick heads up, there isn't going to be any money. So, it's going to be a different session. Revenues are down, but we're going to spend that time again, whatever you want to ask me. But I have papers that I've done seminars with parents and leaders, whatever, on just some simple steps of how to work through the process. You may or may not want to be down there because you may not be able to drive in, but you can do a lot in your own community to build your relationships that's going to help long term. And I think this is just a perfect timing. I know that Shauna, Melissa, and I have talked about, and I think Wes was there too. We're going to try to see what the governor is going to be looking for, but right now they're keeping it really close to the vest. And we know there's going to be a big push about abortion. We know there's going to be a big thing on ESAs, but we don't want our energy, pulled away on those issues, which will even have less impact on when we can get some wins on maybe the transportation, or some wins on, school facilities board. Small wins, I think, for you all are as big or bigger than whether we get the big win. So that's what we're going to focus on. And I'm available. For whatever anybody wants to use me for. So,
and I would just that's great, because actually where I kind of wanted to wrap this up a little bit on at least what I have to say I mean, like I mentioned, Diane and I have had a chance to work together for years. We met each other in Washington at a conference, oh, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago. And one of the things that has impressed me and that I love about Diane is that she is a people person. If you haven't gotten that from her comments, because she is a policy expert extraordinaire, but she is a people person, and so for me, I mean, one of the things that I have appreciated is she has done so much for my districts, to connect me with people in Phoenix, that can help make a difference. For example, we found ourselves, needing a new school. And I knew that just talking to liaisons and, trying to wade through the process wasn't necessarily going to get the job done because of the complexities of the problem. And Diane and I talked, she says, oh, well, you need to talk to Jack Smith. You need to talk to Andy Tobin. You need to talk to, and then, and let me give you their cell phone number, because, that's the kind of connections that Diane can bring to leaders in terms of helping us with the downward side of things sometimes, but with finding the people that can help us. And she's a tremendous reason. And I really look forward to the opportunity to introduce y'all to her, here virtually, but in a couple of weeks in Flagstaff in person, because, this is a relationship that can really improve your effectiveness as a superintendent. And, so that's all I've got to say.
Wes, did you have anything that you
Oh,
wanted?
yeah. You know me, I always have something to say. So in no particular order, when you guys hired me to be executive director and I came down there from Chino, I asked Sean one time, who are the most important people I need to contact? Because my mission was to grow membership and grow brand awareness. And this is the notepad I was holding when he gave me that. And the very top name is Dianne Smith. Listen to her. She knows everyone. So I have this. Someday I may even give this to Dianne. Next thing is, Dianne, I have your name badge. Okay. This is exactly what I was hoping the outcome of this whole thing, change in the executive director leadership would bring. This is the focus on the obtainable, the systematic approach to the focus on obtainable, still being a voice on the big stuff, but let's work quietly and see how many marginal improvements we can make. That is exactly what we were able to do at the final mile, and this sounds great. Welcome aboard, Dianne. I hope you enjoy the conference.
Well, to that end, we are definitely hoping to see you all in the Pines in September at the annual conference. If you've not already registered, like Sean said, there's still slots for golf if you want to join a foursome. And we're looking forward to seeing you at that free conference, as well as for all of the sessions on Friday and Saturday. And hopefully you'll get a chance to help us honor our top 10 finalists for Teacher of the Year and congratulate the person that's actually going to move forward as our Arizona Rural Teacher of the Year. So thank you guys for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you at the next roundtable, and we hope that your year has started off well. Thanks for coming today, and we'll see you soon.